Hi, I'm Chuck Reif, and I'm here today to describe to you in verbal fashion the ABC model. Rational emotive therapy uses this a lot, and it is a way of being able to better manage your own personal emotions. The A stands for activating event, person, and circumstance. This is what gets the ball rolling. Something happens, and from that A comes a B, a belief. The belief is what we say to ourselves about what just occurred. We talk to ourselves many times a day. How's this going? What are they thinking of me? How is this working? Those kind of thoughts are what make up the belief. And from the belief comes the C, the consequences. The consequences are both emotional and behavioral. So, the belief logically leads to the emotional and behavioral responses, which means we have to take personal responsibility for what happens in our lives. We have responsibility for how we feel and how we behave about the things that occur. So, when an event happens, we can't blame the event on how we feel. We can't blame a person for how we feel. We have to see that we have a choice as to how we are going to believe about whatever occurs, about whatever happens. And then that belief, that is our choice, logically leads us to emotions and behaviors that follow. Therefore, the emotions and the behaviors that follow are our personal responsibility. Now, the power of the ABC model is seen in not just the ABC, but it's seen in the D and the E that follow. The D stands for dispute the original belief so that you can come up with a new E, a new emotion and behavior that prayerfully are going to be softer and gentler and easier on our gut, easier on us as a person. So, I use this silly illustration of imagining that you're driving and some guy cuts you off in traffic. The guy cutting you off in traffic is the A, the activating event, person, circumstance. The B that I begin with is he's a jerk, which logically leads me to the C, the consequences emotionally, I feel anger. The consequences behaviorally, I honk the horn. But then it's time to take that and do the D, dispute the original belief. So, what else could we think of that could explain this guy cutting us off in traffic? Some people suggest, well, maybe he just didn't even see me. That's a good one. I know I've cut people off that I didn't see. How about you? Well, if someone has cut us off and they didn't even see us, and because we've done that, we could say, okay, my emotional response now is going to be empathy. I've been there, done that. And behaviorally, for me, I'm still going to beep. I know you think I'm fixated on the horn, but now I'm not beeping out of anger. Now I'm beeping out of concern that if he doesn't become aware of what he's just done, then he could do the same thing further up and cause an accident. So in this new dispute, we've gone from believing now that he didn't even see us to the new emotion of empathy and the behavior of beeping instead of honking. Well, what else could we come up with as a dispute? How about he's distracted by something in his car? Something has happened, we don't know what it is, but now in our thought that he's distracted, we're not taking his action, his behavior personally. We have in the new emotion maybe some understanding. And the new behavior, we're simply going to slow down and get out of his way. Another dispute, it happens to be my personal favorite, is maybe this guy is transporting his wife, who is in the process just before having a baby, and he doesn't want her to have the baby in the back seat of his car. So he is frantically driving to get his wife to the hospital, which is what leads me to the emotion of humor. I'll explain that in a bit. And the behavior of, I'm going to do whatever I can to help them get to the hospital. So now, the reason for the humor, he doesn't want his wife to deliver on the back seat of his car and make that terrible mess. So it's just a frantic situation. So now, if I can, the way it works in my life, use this as when somebody cuts me off and I impulsively get angry and upset, I immediately begin to look for the pregnant wife in the back seat. Never once have I ever seen her back there, but because I'm looking for her, I get the humor response. My anger notches down. My humor notches up. And when Chuck gets home to Eileen, he's a happier camper for having done that. I've better managed my emotions and my behavior. That's how the ABC model works. Now, if we put this into a biblical frame, we can remember what happened with Paul in Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 to 21. Now I want you to know, brethren, that my circumstances have turned out for the greater progress of the gospel, so that my imprisonment in the cause of Christ has become well known throughout the whole Praetorian Guard and to everyone else, and that most of the brethren, trusting in the Lord because of my imprisonment, have far more courage to speak the word of God without fear. Some, to be sure, are preaching Christ even from envy and strife, and some also from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, thinking to cause me distress in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in this I rejoice, yes, and I will rejoice. For I know that this shall turn out for my deliverance through your prayers and the provision of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and hope, that I shall not be put to shame in anything, but that with all boldness Christ shall even now as always be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. Paul was able to take the negative circumstances that he was in that could have easily led him to the belief of God has forsaken me, and leading to the emotion of anger and the behavior of I'm not going to preach Christ anymore. But instead of doing that, Paul had a dispute. His dispute was, God is using my gospel witness to help other people get saved. I'm chained to a Roman guard constantly, 4 different ones each day, and sharing the gospel with them. And guess what? They're sharing the gospel with others. Some of those Roman guard were getting saved. Some of them were sharing with their own family, their own friends, and that's why it says in those verses, throughout the whole Praetorian Guard and to everyone else. So the gospel was being shared. Paul